Greetings and welcome to the fourth week of our Lenten reflection. Thank you for joining us once again this week. May the passion of Jesus Christ be always in our hearts. As we begin this week's reflection, let us place ourselves in the presence of God. Become mindful of whatever you're feeling at this moment. Whether we feel light or darkness, sad or joyful, or filled with anxiety or hope. As a season can change, so is the mood of our hearts. No matter what the season is, no matter what you're feeling, let us open ourselves to the presence of God within us. And enter into that presence here and now.
A certain man had 2 sons. And the younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the portion of goods that falleth to me." And he divided unto them his living. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together and took his journey into a far country, and there wasted his substance with riotous living. And when he had spent all, there arose a mighty famine in that land, and he began to be in want. And he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into his fields to feed swine. And he would fain have filled his belly with the husks that the swine did eat, and no man gave to him. And when he came to himself, he said, "How many hired servants of my father's have bread enough and to spare? I will go to my father and will say unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. Make me as one of thy hired servants. And he arose and came unto his father. But when he was yet a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion, and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. And the son said unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in thy sight, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. But the father said to his servants, Bring forth the best robe and put it on him. And put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet. And bring hither the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to be merry. Now his eldest son was in the field. And as he came and drew nigh to the house, he heard music and dancing. And he called one of the servants and asked him what these things meant. And he said unto him, Thy brother is come, and thy father hath killed the fatted calf, because he hath received him safe and sound. And he was angry and would not go in. Therefore came his father out and entreated him. And he, answering his father, said, Lo, these many years do I serve thee. Neither transgressed I at any time thy commandment, and yet thou never gavest me a kid, that I might make merry with my friends. But as soon as this thy son was come, which hath devoured thy living with harlots, thou hast killed for him the fatted calf. And he said unto him, Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. It was meet that we should make merry and be glad. For this thy brother was dead and is alive, and was lost and is found.
A few days ago, I had posted this picture on my Facebook feed titled An Image of the Holy Family in Ukraine. This was an image published on New York Times about a week ago. It's about Olga with her husband, with her baby and the child's father in Kiev. She literally had used her body to shield her infant daughter from shelling in Ukraine's capital on Friday and managed to save the baby from injury. A moving and heart-wrenching image, which captures the misery and horror of cruel war. It did move so many people on my friends list. People expressing their sadness, shock, pain, concern, prayers, and of course, solidarity with millions in Ukraine and across the world. And one of the comments read like this: Let us keep praying that this unjust war will be stopped very soon and the Ukrainians will regain their freedom. Yes, we all do hope and pray for peace, not only in Ukraine, but in the entire world. But the word freedom captured my attention in the comment. Our public discourse these days is saturated with the word freedom. Probably the story of prodigal son is a good experience of freedom. First, there is the younger son, an impatient lad who wanted his freedom. He can't wait to go out on his own. He wants his share of the inheritance now. Couldn't wait for the father to die. He wants it now. And he believes that his money will give him the freedom that he seeks. Greedy fingers, itchy feet, essential nature, wanting to live it up and to hell with the commandments. A life based on doing whatever he feels like doing. Not an unfamiliar story, really. Any degree of authority over an individual is deemed oppression, and any civil power is called tyranny. An ideology taken to its extreme length leads to nihilism. That is, existence or value are meaningless. We have seen this very much in recent times. People are quite literally protesting what would save their lives and cheering their own death, for example. As Rabbi Jonathan Sachs says, we have undergone a kind of cultural climate change that has seen a move from we to I. Life has become about what I can get out of it, not what I can put in. A culture of extreme individualism, instant gratification which devalues loyalty and abdicates responsibility, why we find it harder to talk to those we disagree with. A mentality well exploited by current economic policies. In today's world, many forms of injustice persist by a profit-based economy model that does not hesitate to exploit, discard, and even kill human beings. And Pope Francis addresses this issue in his encyclical Fratelli Tutti. As he says, opening up to the world is an expression that has been co-opted by the economic and financial sector and is now used exclusively of openness to foreign interest or to the freedom of economic powers to invest without obstacles or complications in all countries. Local conflicts and disregard for the common good are exploited by the global economy in order to impose a single cultural model. And the advance of this kind of globalism strengthens the identity of the more powerful who can protect themselves, but it tends to diminish the identity of the weaker and the poorer regions, making them more vulnerable and dependent. While one part of the humanity lives in opulence, another part sees its own dignity denied, scorned, and trampled upon, and its fundamental rights discarded or violated. A society in which everyone feels free to do what they want is not a free society. It is not a society at all. It is chaos. Individualism and instant gratification has led to an epidemic of loneliness and family breakdown, depression, drug abuse, and suicide, and obsession with self-help. We all know what happens in the story. The younger son goes through the money in a flash, and he is left with nothing. And so he is reduced to hire himself out to feed pigs. His freedom isolates him, causes him suffering, and makes him a source of suffering to others. Then we have the older son, who is angry and will not join in the party. The older son reminds his father that he was the good son, who never disobeyed, and there was never a party like this thrown for him. And he refuses to join in. And we see this attitude again in our society. The elevation of identity politics that has bred polarization and paralysis. The us versus them mentality. A mentality towards people who may be different than us in some way, whether it is race, gender, age, nationality, culture, religion, or socioeconomic status. Rather than emphasizing the value of all working together to improve the society, to be emphasizing differences and excluding or rejecting certain groups, fostering fear and hatred towards excluded groups that are considered different. The heinous and virulent attacks against them are all part of a disturbingly growing image of racial and ethnic hostility. In the recent times, survey after survey shows mistrust, fear, and stagnation reigning supreme. It is not hard to see how this us versus them mentality can be destructive to both ourselves and society as a whole. And it is scary to think just how susceptible we are to these biases, even under completely random circumstances. Again, Pope Francis addresses this in his encyclical Fratelli Tutti. Today, in many countries, he says, hyperbole, extremism, and polarization have become political tools, employing a strategy of ridicule, suspicion, and relentless criticism. In a variety of ways, one denies the right of others to exist or even to have an opinion. Rabbi Jonathan Sacks warns of the growing sense in our politics that the other side is less than fully human, that its supporters are not part of the same moral community as us, that somehow their sensibilities are alien and threatening, as if they were not the opposition within a political arena, but the enemy. Full stop. So the younger son sought freedom in wealth and pleasure, having his way. The older son gave up his freedom being self-righteous, trying to earn his father's love, which he didn't realize he always had. So the elder son's sense of duty isolates him and causes suffering, and both have developed habits that cuts them off from others. The father reveals his freedom in his unconditional love. He assents to the younger son's demand. The act of love comes at a great material and emotional cost, but he does it without hesitation. When the younger son returns, the father's freedom then allows him to forgive everything and receive the son back. His father catches sight of him down the road and runs to meet him. He embraces his son and calls the servants to get a fine robe for his son to wear and a ring for his finger, and slaughter the fatted calf for a banquet, because he has his son back. The only one, in fact, in the parable who is really free is the father. He is free to rejoice in his son's return. He is free to rush to his lost son. Instead of waiting for him to beg forgiveness, he is free enough to plead with his other son rather than laying down the law. He is free to love unconditionally. Christianity, in fact, ties our freedom to love, compassion, wisdom, and common good. The beginning of love is to let those we love be perfectly themselves, and not to twist them to fit our own image. Otherwise, we love only the reflection of ourselves we find in them, says Thomas Merton. Freedom comes from unconditional love when we are able to see our circumstances, lessons, and growth processes from the eyes of compassion instead of judgment. When we can see our lives from love, we are truly liberated. We begin to see everyone as individuals worthy of respect, equality, and kindness, regardless of what group they may be categorized in. To quote a few personalities, loving unconditionally is the path of true freedom, says Harold W. Becker, the founder of the Love Foundation. And for Francis says, and does not true freedom means choosing the way in this world that leads to good of all and guided by love? In true love, you attain freedom. The words of the spiritual leader, Thich Nhat Hanh. Many people in our world have deluded themselves that their freedom lies in having it their way or in the oppression or destruction of the other. But we know where true freedom lies. Our freedom lies in a God who said, I have come so that you may have life, life in abundance, and offered himself in unconditional love. As Pope Francis says, that which gives us true freedom and true happiness is the compassionate love of Christ. Dear friends, may we live in the freedom of the children of God. May our willingness to love as Jesus loved help us bring about the reconciliation the world so sorely needs. Are we willing to be set free to love as Jesus loves? What holds me captive in resentment, fear, and hatred? How will the story of prodigal son speak through me this week?